Long before New York reached for the clouds, before Tokyo's skyline shimmered with glass and steel, there existed a hidden city tucked deep inside the jungles of Southeast Asia. A city so vast it could rival ancient Rome in scale, so sophisticated it bent rivers to its will and carved gods into stone. This was Angkor, the beating heart of the Khmer Empire. Today, it lies asleep beneath tangled roots and monsoon rains. Its mysteries scattered across moss-covered ruins, still waiting to be remembered.
Our story begins in the 9th century. A man named Jayavarman II, part warrior, part priest, and part prophet, stood up and declared himself Devaraja, the God King. With that bold claim, he didn't just name himself ruler, he reimagined an entire civilization. At that time, the region that is now Cambodia was fragmented into smaller kingdoms, but Jayavarman had a vision. One land, united under a divine ruler, aligned with the gods and infused with cosmic purpose. He didn't just want power, he wanted order. So he founded something that had never existed before, the Khmer Empire. But the Khmers weren't just building another kingdom with palaces and roads. No, what they created was a sacred map of the universe, a spiritual blueprint carved into stone and earth. To the Khmer, the land itself was holy. Every city, every temple, every reservoir was laid out with intention. They didn't build for convenience, they built for the cosmos. Their capital, Angkor, wasn't just a royal residence, it was a living mandala, a symbolic reflection of the universe. Every mountain was transformed into a man-made pyramid. Every moat became an ocean. Every wall was aligned with the heavens. At the heart of it all stood Angkor Wat. You've probably heard the name before. It's the world's largest religious monument. But that title doesn't even come close to capturing its true essence. Angkor Wat wasn't just a temple. It was a spiritual engine, a calendar, a gateway between the world of humans and the divine. Its design mirrored Mount Meru, the sacred mountain in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology, believed to be the center of all creation. Each tower, each courtyard, each corridor wasn't just architecture, it was a symbol, a pathway toward enlightenment. And yet, for the Khmer, this wasn't some abstract concept, this was their reality. Their temples were not only for worship, they were expressions of math, astronomy, mythology, and power. Think about that. In a dense tropical jungle, centuries before the modern era, these people created a metropolis that didn't just house humans, it housed gods. The story of Angkor is not just one of rulers and wars, it's about how belief, vision, and science came together to shape something timeless. Jayavarman II passed on, but his legacy burned bright. His successors took his dream and made it grander. The Khmer Empire expanded rapidly. Over the next 300 years, it stretched across much of modern-day Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam. At its height, it was one of the most powerful empires in Southeast Asia. And at the center of it all, Angkor continued to evolve, growing in complexity, in population, in spiritual and political significance. New temples rose, new kings declared themselves divine, and each one added his own layer to the story. The city became a living document, rewritten again and again, not by tearing down the old, but by building over it. One god gave way to another. Hinduism slowly blended into Buddhism. Temples shifted in purpose, but not in grandeur. And the jungle kingdom continued to thrive. But how did they sustain such an enormous population in a place surrounded by dense forest and unpredictable weather? That's the question we'll explore in Part 2. Because while Angkor was a city of stone, its true strength came from something far more fluid: water.
Imagine trying to feed a city of over 1 million people, not on a riverbank, not on fertile plains, but in the middle of a dense, humid jungle. No highways, no trucks, no electricity. Just rain, mud, and a whole lot of mosquitoes. Sounds impossible, right? But the Khmers pulled it off. Not just for a decade, not even for a century, but for hundreds of years. And they did it with water. While most civilizations built around rivers, the Khmers hacked the jungle itself. They didn't wait for nature to provide. They reprogrammed it. What they built was nothing short of an ancient hydroengineering marvel, a vast, interconnected system of canals, moats, dams, spillways, and enormous reservoirs known as barays. These weren't just decorative or symbolic, they were practical, life-saving. They caught monsoon rains during the wet season and stored them for the dry season. They irrigated thousands of acres of rice paddies. They moved water across an empire, balancing floods and droughts. To put it simply, where others saw a swamp, the Khmers saw potential. They transformed it into a kingdom powered by rice. And rice meant power. Because when you can feed more people, you can grow your population. When you grow your population, you can raise armies, build temples, and expand your borders. Water made that possible. Water was their fuel. And Angkor became the engine. But it wasn't just about survival. It was about control. The hydraulic system gave the kings of Angkor dominance over both nature and people. Controlling the flow of water meant controlling the flow of life, and that control was divine. Let's step back for a second. Angkor was massive, covering over 1,000 square kilometers. But it wasn't one city in the way we think of cities today. It was a complex web of urban centers, temples, farms, and infrastructure. A megalopolis before the word even existed. And at the heart of that web were the temples. Not just places of worship, but tools of astronomy, politics, and propaganda. Take a walk through Angkor Wat. What you'll see isn't just art, it's information. Stone carvings that tell stories from Hindu epics like the Ramayana and Mahabharata, but also celestial events, planetary alignments, and mythological cycles. These temples were aligned with the stars, built with such precision that certain corridors light up only during the equinox. They were, in a way, cosmic computers, tracking the heavens, predicting the seasons. Some scholars even believe that the carvings functioned as lunar calendars, able to mark eclipses and guide agricultural cycles. It's easy to forget that while Europe was crawling through the Dark Ages, the Khmers were blending religion with astronomy, spirituality with science, and stone with symbology. Their understanding of the cosmos didn't come from telescopes. It came from centuries of observation, passed down through generations of priests, scholars, and architects. And then there's the architecture itself. Have you ever looked closely at the layout of Angkor Wat? It's not just pretty, it's mathematically brilliant. The temple is laid out to reflect Hindu cosmology. Its 5 towers mirror the 5 peaks of Mount Meru, the center of the universe in Hindu belief. Its outer walls represent mountain ranges. Its surrounding moat symbolizes the cosmic ocean. Even the dimensions are symbolic. For example, the central tower stands 65 meters high. That's no accident. The temple's measurements correspond to solar and lunar calendars. It's as if the entire building is a giant stone clock. But the magic of Angkor wasn't just in its symmetry. It was in its scale. The sheer number of temples, over 1,000. The size of the reservoirs, one of them, the West Beret, is over 5 miles long. The detail of the carvings, each one unique, hand-chiseled, many still visible today. All of this done without modern tools. No cranes, no concrete mixers, just manpower, elephants, bamboo scaffolding, and a whole lot of determination. And behind it all was belief. The Khmers believed that their kings were not just men, but earthly vessels of divine beings, avatars of Shiva, Vishnu, or Buddha. Every new king built a new temple, not just to honor the gods, but to cement his legacy, to anchor himself in the sacred geography of Angkor. And this is where it gets fascinating. They didn't bulldoze the old temples. They didn't erase what came before. They built on top of it, layer after layer, century after century, like spiritual sediment, one religion giving way to another, one vision transforming into the next. That's why when you walk through Angkor, you see Hindu gods in one temple, Buddhist imagery in the next, and something completely different just down the road. It's not a contradiction. It's a timeline etched into stone. And at the center of this ever-shifting city stood the Bayon Temple. Unlike the soaring spires of Angkor Wat, Bayon is strange, almost surreal. 50 towers, each carved with giant, serene faces, smiling just slightly, facing every direction, watching. No one exactly knows who the faces represent. Some say the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. Others say it's the face of King Jayavarman VII himself. Whoever it was, the message is clear. You are always being seen, always being watched, by gods or kings, or maybe both. Bayon is haunting, but beautiful. A perfect symbol of an empire at its height, powerful, enigmatic, and dripping with spiritual weight. But even the most powerful empires don't last forever. And in Part 3, we'll explore how this magnificent civilization, built on water, belief, and stone, eventually disappeared. As you walk through the jungle-shrouded ruins of Angkor, something strange happens. You begin to feel eyes on you, but not human eyes. Stone eyes. Dozens of them, carved into towers, gazing out from moss-covered walls, silent, eternal. That's the legacy of the Khmer kings. They didn't just rule people. They shaped time, not with paper or ink, but with granite and sandstone. Every temple was a declaration. I was here. I ruled. I was divine. You see, the Khmer kings weren't just political leaders. They were walking gods. The early rulers aligned themselves with Shiva and Vishnu from Hindu belief. Later, they turned to the Buddha. But the pattern was the same. Each king claimed to be more than mortal.
They were Devaraja, god-kings, and every new reign brought with it a fresh vision of the universe, carved in stone.
Jayavarman II, the founder, was the first to declare himself a divine ruler. But it was Jayavarman VII, one of Angkor's greatest kings, who pushed the concept to its limits. He built hospitals, highways, and more temples than anyone before him. He made Bayon his centerpiece, a strange, sacred maze of towers and faces. He embraced Mahayana Buddhism and flooded his empire with compassion-themed iconography. But don't be fooled. Compassion did not mean weakness. Jayavarman VII expanded Khmer territory through brutal warfare. He fought the invading Chums and took back lost lands with fiery vengeance. Under him, the empire swelled to its greatest size, a golden age carved into every corridor. But what rises must eventually fall. The signs of decline didn't appear all at once. There wasn't a single invasion or a cataclysmic collapse. It was more like a slow unraveling. And the jungle was patient. By the 13th century, things started to shift. New kings came to power, but with less vision. Religious focus shifted again, back toward Theravada Buddhism, which was more modest, more inward-looking. The god-kings vanished, and so did the grand temple-building projects. Without these colossal works to unify the people, culturally and spiritually, the empire began to fracture. Meanwhile, the brilliant water system that had once sustained Angkor began to break down. Monsoons grew more unpredictable. Some years brought devastating floods, others crushing droughts. The canals, once carefully maintained, began to silt up. The reservoirs cracked under the pressure. And with water went the rice. No rice meant no food. No food meant no laborers, no soldiers, no temples. An empire that had conquered nature now found itself at its mercy. But nature wasn't the only enemy. Foreign pressures mounted. The rising power of Ayutthaya in what is now Thailand began pushing in from the west. They raided Khmer territory, sacked cities, and eventually took control of Angkor itself. The once great capital became a ghost of its former glory. By the 15th century, it was largely abandoned. The royal court moved south, closer to modern-day Phnom Penh. The jungle moved in. And as trees split the stones, as vines choked the statues, the people left. Temples were forgotten. Canals vanished beneath layers of mud and roots. The gods, those mighty stone faces, fell silent. But the story doesn't end there. For centuries, Angkor slept beneath the trees, known only to monks, locals, and whispers in the wind. Then, in the 1800s, it was discovered again, this time French explorers. They couldn't believe what they saw. Massive towers rising out of the jungle, devatas, stone celestial dancers etched in such perfect detail they seemed to breathe. A lost city unlike anything Europe had ever imagined. They called it the Cambodian Rome. But Angkor was something entirely different. It was not built by Greeks or Romans. It had no marble, no aqueducts, no Latin inscriptions. It was Southeast Asia's own miracle. And the more researchers dug, the more incredible it became. In recent years, thanks to modern technology like LIDAR, laser scanning that can see beneath vegetation, we've discovered the truth. Angkor wasn't just a cluster of temples. It was the largest pre-industrial city in the world. Hundreds of thousands of people, dozens of suburbs, grids of roads, more water infrastructure than we ever imagined. And yet, so much of it remains hidden. Temples still buried, pathways still lost, stories still untold. Today, millions visit Angkor Wat each year. They marvel at the sunrise behind its towers, they snap photos, they walk the corridors, but most don't realize what they're standing on. This wasn't just a city. It was a cosmic map, a spiritual machine, a dream carved into stone. Angkor was humanity at its most ambitious, not just in architecture, but in meaning. The Khmer didn't build for today, they built for eternity. And though time, war, and weather have worn down their empire, their vision remains. In the quiet stillness between broken pillars, in the reflection of lotus ponds, in the soft smile of a stone deity watching from a crumbling tower. The Khmer Empire rose from the heart of the jungle. It conquered nature, then was conquered by it in return. But it never truly disappeared. Its spirit lingers. In the chants of monks who still light incense in ancient halls, in the artisans who trace old patterns onto new cloth, in the DNA of modern Cambodia itself. You can feel it if you pause long enough. Angkor's not gone. It's waiting, waiting for someone to listen, to look deeper, to remember that once in a forgotten jungle, a people dared to build heaven on earth. And for a moment, they did.